Hello guys, welcome to Solo ReacTalk. Today I'm going to be reacting to Time Ghost History. The episode is called Miracle on the Vistula, Polish-Soviet War, Between Two Wars, 1920, Part 1 of 4. If you want to check out my other reactions to Between Two Wars, remember the playlist card will be at the top. Just click on it and you'll be able to access them. Okay, let's start. 3, 2, 1, go.
Russian art, literature, and history often promise deep tragedy and magnificent drama. And in 1920, they deliver big time on that promise as Russia and the better part of Eastern Europe continue to go up in flames. Welcome to Between Two Wars, a summary of the interwar years from the uncertainty and hedonism of the 1920s to humanity's descent into the darkness of the Second World War. I'm Indy Nidell. Last year, the Bolshevik Red Army had more or less obliterated the White Army and swallowed up a large part of the new nations of Eastern Europe. Only Poland was still truly fighting the Great Bear. In January 1920, the Red Army continues to push back the White Army on all fronts. The head of the Reds, Leon Trotsky, had put Mikhail Tukhachevsky in command of the forces fighting Alexander Kolchak, who was proclaimed himself supreme ruler of Russia in Siberia. Tukhachevsky is a former Russian nobleman who joined the revolution in its early days. By now, he's a well-tested, astute tactician and theoretician of war. In December, Tukhachevsky had more or less disintegrated Kolchak's army, and he's now in charge of routing Anton Denikin in the southwest. Meanwhile, what's left of Kolchak's army is on a forced retreat towards Irkutsk. Now, he makes it there, but too late, for it's just come under control of the socialist revolutionaries. To make a long story short, Kolchak is betrayed and handed over to the Bolsheviks, who execute him on February 7th and dump his body under the ice of the Angara River. The remaining white forces flee east, hotly pursued by the Reds, and January and February sees the Great Siberian Ice March, where some 30,000 soldiers, their families, their possessions, and the Tsar's gold cross frozen Lake Baikal, the largest lake in the world, in sub-zero temperatures. Many freeze to death. The survivors eventually make it into territory controlled by the Japanese army in the Trans-Baikal. Nonetheless, the White Army in the east is no more. On the southern front, as the year begins, the White Army under Anton Denikin retreats toward Rostov, but are unable to hold the Don River region. Tukhachevsky forces them further and further back. Eventually, they have to evacuate to Crimea, leaving a third of their men, all of their horses, and any heavy equipment behind. There, they're protected by the truce between the Reds and the Black Army, anarchists fighting anyone and everyone to establish a free anarchist state in Ukraine. But still further west, the hopes of...
So there was the Red Army, there was the White Army, and now there's the Black Army. Wow.
expanding the Communist International are facing difficulties. In Hungary, the local Soviet had already collapsed last summer, and the country is now occupied by Romanian troops. Under Allied pressure, though, the Romanians finally evacuate on February 25th. Miklos Horthy becomes the regent of Hungary as the Kingdom of Hungary is reestablished, and this secures Hungary from the Bolsheviks for the moment. But the biggest challenge the Soviets face now is Poland. Now, remember that the Bolshevik goal is to retake the territories lost to Germany under the Brest-Litovsk Treaty. Lenin, the leader of the Bolsheviks, also wants to reach the German borders, possibly even support the German communists, invade and roll up Germany in the Communist International. So far, the Polish forces have been successful at holding back the Bolsheviks and keeping them inside of what was briefly Ukraine. As we saw in 1919, Ukraine was under attack from all over the place. To be more precise, the Ukrainian People's Republic, the UNR, failed to gain control of what they perceived as Ukraine. By now, they've lost any control they might have had to various factions. What remains of the Russian White Army and the Black Army in Crimea, the Russian Red Army in central and eastern Ukraine, and Poland in the west. Kiev, the intended capital, has changed hands 8 times since 1917. In essence, Ukraine was declared, but it's never really come into existence. Historians have argued that the Polish-Ukrainian War over eastern Galicia in 1919 was the main reason that the UNR were not able to fight back to create a stable Ukrainian state. The Ukrainian forces in eastern Galicia are experienced, well-trained, and staunchly anti-Bolshevik, contrary to the rest of the region, where the troops are mostly volunteers, nationalist support is fickle, and communist support frequent. On April 21st, Józef Pilsudski, Chief of State and Field Marshal of Poland, and exiled UNR leader Szymon Petlura signed the Treaty of Warsaw, which promises Polish military aid and sets a border along the Zbruch River. This leaves eastern Galicia in Poland, but frees the captured Ukrainian forces there to fight alongside the Polish to push back the Bolsheviks. 65,000 Polish and 15,000 Ukrainian soldiers set out against the Soviet forces and are met with immediate success. They push the Red Army out of central Ukraine, and facing only token resistance, they enter Kiev May 7th.
Like, Ukraine was a battlefield. It was stuck in the middle between these two giants, Poland and the Red Army of Russia. And the land itself must have been devastated. The people in that country must have been really reeling from the devastation of this war between all these different factions that keep pulling and pushing and pulling and pushing, you know, like a tug of war back and forth. And yeah, I'm just, as I'm listening to this, I'm just thinking about what's happening today. Like, I don't know. We're not at that stage yet of war, but, you know, people keep talking, keep posturing, keep flexing their muscles and everything, and I'm just worried about what's really going to be happening in the later months to come during this year. But yeah, it's really unfortunate. It's really, really unfortunate what's happening to them.
As agreed, the Polish forces are withdrawn, leaving Kiev under Petlura's control. Thing is, the whole success of this whole operation now depends on the creation of a Ukrainian army strong enough to defend against the Soviets. And after years of war, the local population are just tired of it. Petlura only recruits around 25,000 more men. In Moscow, the sudden loss of Kiev creates an internal conflict within the Soviet leadership. Lenin wants desperately to invade Poland. Leon Trotsky wants to sue for peace with the Polish and find a compromise over Ukraine. Trotsky, the head of the Red Army, argues that his forces are worn down and no longer equipped to fight Poland after the brutal campaigns against the White armies. He gets support from Joseph Stalin, part of the Bolshevik leadership, but also a commander under...
Look at Joseph. Huh? People were young during those times. Look at him.
Trotsky and the Red Army. Stalin additionally believes that the Polish people will not, as Lenin thinks they will, welcome them with open arms and join the Bolshevik Revolution.
I like the color in these photos. I'm wondering, is it color filtered during these days, during our modern times, or was it color filtered long ago? But I don't think they had color photos during the times of Lenin and Stalin. I can't remember right now, but I think it's been color filtered during our modern era. This is very nice. This is very, very nice.
There's also a problem with morale and motivation. Trotsky, Stalin, and Tukhachevsky have been maintaining a murderous discipline, quenching any attempt to desert by summary executions. In the last few months, though, the desperation after many long years of war has left even these brutal measures unsuccessful. Still, Lenin prevails, and Trotsky is forced to prepare a campaign against Poland. Tukhachevsky will command the northern armies aimed directly at Poland, with Stalin in command of the southern armies that will enter Ukraine. At this point, help arrives from an unexpected source. The now retired former commander-in-chief of the Imperial Russian Army, General Alexei Brusilov of World War I fame, publishes an article in the state-controlled newspaper Pravda on May 30th, appealing to former Imperial Army officers to put aside their ideological differences and join the Bolshevik Red Army. Brusilov has been on the sidelines of the Civil War so far. He's torn between his sympathy for the white cause and loyalty to his men. You see, the majority of his previous commanders and soldiers had joined the Red Army. Soldiers and commanders on both sides have immense respect for Brusilov. So the appeal works. 14,000 officers and 100,000 deserters enlist or return to the army. So the Polish army is now both outnumbered and outgunned. In early June, the armies under Stalin attack on the Ukrainian front east of Kiev. Pilsudski returns and holds the Russians back briefly, but he gets word that a Red Army offensive against Poland is coming further north and prepares a strategic withdrawal. On June 5th, repeated Red Army attacks break the front. By June 10th, the Polish army is in retreat, and on the 13th, Kiev is evacuated and again left to the Soviets. For the next few weeks, there is scattered fighting, while the Polish army reinforces towards the north and Stalin drives them back further towards eastern Galicia in the south. In the north, Tukhachevsky launches an offensive on July 4th, crossing the Auta and Berezina rivers into the former Republic of Belarus. For 3 days, the outcome is in doubt, but on the 7th, the Soviet numerical superiority wins the day, and the Polish are now in retreat along the whole front. The Soviets break through, taking Vilnius. To the south in Galicia, Stalin's forces are also advancing, and it is now clear to the Poles that Soviet Russia isn't just pushing its borders westward. Poland's independence is at stake. The Red Army is advancing 30 kilometers a day. Grodno falls, Brest-Litovsk falls, and by August 2nd, the Soviet lines are only 100 kilometers from Warsaw. Poland tries to sue for peace, but the Soviets refuse. Trotsky now orders Stalin to leave Galicia and join Tukhachevsky for an offensive against Warsaw. But Stalin has a different idea. He wants to secure Galicia first. He refuses to follow the order and besieges Lviv, the largest city in southeastern Poland, instead. Tukhachevsky, with 5 Soviet armies, approaches Warsaw. Soviet confidence soars, with Pravda reporting of plans to carry the campaign to London and to Paris, and Tukhachevsky wants to carry on to Berlin over the corpse of Poland. On August 6th,
wow, winning your battles just gives you that confidence, that exuberance, like I can conquer the world. Be careful of that feeling. It's very, very powerful, and it can lead you to complete disaster. But let's continue.
Poland appeals to the world at large for help, citing the dangers of a Bolshevik invasion of Europe and stressing the preservation of Poland's self-determination. Hungary offers to send 30,000 cavalry, but Czechoslovakia refuses to let them pass through. There's a sort of ultimatum from the Allies to Soviet Russia that they halt their offensive at the Curzon line, Poland's agreed ethnographic frontier, but the Soviets ignore it. No help is coming. On August 13th, an initial Soviet attack on Warsaw is repulsed. Tukhachevsky thinks everything is proceeding well, but he doesn't know that Polish intelligence has decrypted Red Army radio messages, and he is on his way into a trap. He has left only a token force south of Warsaw guarding the link between the Soviet northwest and southwest fronts. With Stalin still obsessively clinging to Lviv, this leaves Tukhachevsky's rear exposed. Poland counterattacks on the 14th, and in one day turns the Soviet advance towards Warsaw into a retreat. By the 16th, the Polish reserves join the battle and, advancing from Warsaw on the south, break through the gap between the Soviet forces. On the 18th, they attack the surprised Tukhachevsky's forces from the rear and encircle most of them. The Soviet armies fall into chaos and entire divisions disintegrate. The Red Army defeat is so sudden and so total that it's still called the miracle at the Vistula by some, though the cracking of the radio codes played a big part in the victory.
You see, I've said this before in previous Between Two Wars videos, particularly about Russia in the modern era. When I've said that, some people might believe that to win a war, all you need is a large army with advanced technology, and you can crush your enemy in one fell swoop. In war, it doesn't really happen that way. Mainly, it's about luck. You have to have luck. You have to have some sort of an advantage, even if it's small and minute. to actually make a dent into your enemy's armor, and also to try and defeat them. You just need luck. You need a lot of it, in fact. And the code breaking by the Polish was that sort of luck that they needed. Because really, war is unpredictable. There is no true victor, because nothing is yet decided until that last battle, until that last surrender by your enemy forces. Until that time, everything is on the table. It's a winner takes all situation. And just because you have the numerical superiority or the technological advancement compared to your enemies doesn't really mean it's a short victory. So yeah, the Russians are learning that the hard way. And if I have to say again, like in our modern times right now, if they invade Ukraine, if they start fighting with Ukraine, they're going to have a huge mess on their hands, one that they won't be able to wash off. So yeah, war is a gamble, guys. There's no assured victory.
With renewed confidence, the Polish continue to strike. Stalin fails to take Lviv. Among the battles in these weeks is the Battle of Komarov, a huge cavalry battle and one of the last cavalry battles in history, and another major Soviet defeat. Tukhachevsky manages to reorganize a new defensive line in September, but the Poles break through that too, outflanking and destroying Soviet forces at the Battle of the Niemen River. The Poles are now advancing on all fronts. Now, Soviet Russia sues for peace, and Poland, pressured by the Allies and the League of Nations, makes a counteroffer. An armistice goes into effect in mid-October. Poland is safe for now.
You see, they were celebrating when they entered into Poland. They were saying that we're going to be reaching Germany and going off to Britain and taking over there. No, guys, don't do that. Don't talk like that. That's how you get yourselves into this trouble. Focus. But luckily they didn't focus. Luckily they did. They were defeated. So yeah. I'm just imagining what could have happened if they actually did defeat Poland during that time and they went further into Germany and Britain and probably France. Time would have been different for all of us, really. Yeah, alternate reality.
In Crimea, the White Army is evacuating, and on November 13th, 126 ships carrying the last evacuees and refugees sail for Turkey, Tunisia, and the Kingdom of Slovenes, Croats, and Serbs. As soon as the White Army is gone, the Red Army breaks its truce with the Black Army. They ambush the Black Army leaders, commanders, and headquarters staff at a conference and execute them. The commander, Nestor Makhno, himself escapes and is forced to flee as the full weight of the Red Army and the Cheka, the Soviet secret police, descend on his anarchist forces. As 1920 ends, many of the Eastern European nations proclaimed only a little more than a year ago no longer exist. The Bolsheviks have now control of the better part of the old Russian Empire, but fighting will go on for a few more months as they secure pockets of land that still resist the Communist International. This process is a brutal, bloody affair, with the Red Army and the Cheka murdering tens of thousands of suspected anti-revolutionaries. All over Russia, corpses will dangle from gallows, trees, lamp poles, telegraph posts. Other people will be imprisoned or sent to forced labor camps, many to never be seen again. Two of the men in charge of that brutality, previous friends Leon Trotsky and Joseph Stalin, have come to despise each other over the chaos that Stalin created in the Polish War. This personal conflict will affect the world far beyond the loss of that war itself. In any case, the Bolshevik westward advance has been halted, and a brand new nation, Poland, has proven its mettle and stood fast against a much more powerful enemy. British historian A.J.P. Taylor said that the Polish-Soviet War largely determined the course of European history for the next 20 years or more. Almost unconsciously, Soviet leaders abandoned the cause of international revolution. British military historian and general J.F.C. Fuller ranks the Battle of Warsaw as one of the most decisive battles in history, as it prevented Soviet influence from reaching the borders of Germany, Romania, and Hungary at what was a very critical and uncertain stage in those nations. In our next episode, we'll look at what is going on in one of those countries in 1920, Germany. Speaking of Germany, the events of this year in Eastern Europe also lay the foundation for the events of September 1939, when Poland will face Russia again and will also have a date with destiny with a much more brutal enemy from the West. To get our episodes ahead of time and to support our effort to make more content like this, join the Time Ghost Army on Patreon or directly at the timeghost.tv website. And there, you can also sign up for our forum for free. Links are in the description. If you missed our first episode about the Russian Civil War, it's right here. And if you have not done so already, subscribe to Time Ghost and World War II on YouTube. World War II week by week starts September 1st, 2018. I'll see you next time. And as the Russian proverb goes, go west, my friend. Go west.
You know what I've realized is that wars don't bring everlasting peace. It just creates more wars, smaller wars that transform into bigger wars later down in the future. And yeah, really, after the Bolshevik Russians won and they defeated Ukraine, they were halted by the Polish, who then the Soviet Bolsheviks decided, let's sue for peace. They continued on their war against the Black Army in Crimea, and they executed the leadership. They decimated the people and the towns and everyone else that was in that area. You know, they tormented them. They put them into labor camps, and all across this brand new empire, the Red Empire, the Russian Soviet Empire, Soviet Union, really there was still more pain and suffering. The wars never brought peace. It was all just the ambitions of men who wanted to create something out of the death, the bones of so many people, you know. And yeah, the Polish really showed their steel, they showed their metal in the field of battle, and they were fighting a far larger force. They tried to help the Ukrainians, but it just wasn't enough. It just really wasn't enough. Also, the Russians had their own small little luck as well in terms of past very famous generals from World War I, you know, advocating for the Russian Bolsheviks to have a galvanizing force to push back the Ukrainians and the Polish, and that was their luck, you know. And the Polish had their own luck in deciphering the radio transmissions from Russia and using that information against their enemies. And yeah, like I've said before, there are no clear winners of a war until that last battle, until someone comes to the table and say we surrender. Until then, nobody is going to be a winner. Nobody is certain of victory. No one. So yeah, no matter how many men you may have under your banner, no matter how much mechanized units you may have, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. If your enemy has a way to adapt to that situation, has the focus and the mentality to keep together and also have a bit of luck, they can do it. They can do it. It's almost like, what was that biblical story? David and Goliath? Yeah, David and Goliath. And here you can see that David has actually won against Goliath, and I wonder what's going to be happening next in part 2 of 4 of Between Two Wars, during 1920. Guys, remember, if you like the video, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos, and I will see you next week. Okay, bye bye.